Yes.
Um, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Rachel Fox with the Sunny Day Fund, and I was going to introduce you guys to my friends in just a minute. I'm very excited that they're here. For those of you who might be new to Sunny Day Fund or are here to kind of see what this is all about, we do workplace emergency savings as an employee benefit. So this is a payroll deducted, employer rewarded benefit that is available through an employer. It's part of the financial wellness campaigns that you see kind of all around that a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to operationalize that. So we're one of those options out there. Certainly not the only option, and we'll talk about some of those other strategies that employers have been trying as well. But we'll just kind of go over what we saw happen in the market of emergency savings accounts as an employee benefit in 2023 and what we expect to see happening in 2024 based on conversations that we've had with employers, employees, again, from a consultant's point of view, as well as legislation that might be pretty exciting things might be coming around the corner. So let me introduce, hopefully you guys can introduce yourselves. I think that's probably a little bit better. Kevin, would you like to start it off for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin O'Toole. I'm a consultant with TriBridge Partners. We're an independent brokerage and advisory firm based out of Maryland. We predominantly service clients in the small and middle market throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia, focus on health and employee benefits and retirement plans.
And then Don?
Sure. Don Baylor Jr., head of worker solutions at Lafayette Square. Lafayette Square is an investment firm that invests in middle market companies, particularly in underserved areas. Worker Solutions is our managerial assistance platform that seeks to improve employee well-being and retention.
Thanks. And Allison?
My name is Allison DePauli. I am the founder of Altique Consulting. We help middle market employers turn their health plans into something that performs for them rather than against them.
Great. And I'm happy to have all of you here because I think that a lot of you have, I think you come from kind of just different perspectives from the world of employee benefits, and you see kind of the whole picture between what health benefits are doing, what retirement benefits are doing, and other financial benefits, as well as just kind of on the workforce development side, how can we target the labor pool that we would really like to hire? A lot of employers are having retention problems, and this is really a powerful tool to let people know, wow, my employer sees me and they're kind of meeting me where I'm at. So that's where I wanted to start off today, just talking about really what is emergency savings really quickly for those who might be new to this concept. I think a lot of people realize that employees are struggling financially and that financial burdens and financial stress is usually top of mind for employees. If you ask them what keeps you up at night, many times the most frequent answer is going to be something around finances. So a lot of people know this is a concern, but again, what are the options to address this? And a lot of people didn't even know that emergency savings as a benefit is a thing because it's a brand new benefit category that we've been helping to trailblaze. So it's exciting for us. A couple stats just to kind of frame the conversation. So we know that 57% of Americans have less than $1,000 saved up. And when you consider that in light of some of these other statistics, I always love hearing Matt Ball from the Financial Health Network talk about these statistics. He said nearly half of US consumers face at least one unexpected expense, some sort of emergency expense every quarter, every 90 days. And the average emergency expense is over $1,400. So when you consider that most Americans have less than $1,000 saved up, we can see why this is just a constant onslaught of a lot of stressors to them. And so a lot of times we're talking about what are the answers? What can we do as an employer? And Allison, I loved how you kind of talked about this yesterday because a lot of employers would say, you know, people can just go get some split direct deposits. That's their own personal financial stuff. We don't really need to get involved with that. But I think that there are a lot of either low savers or no savers out there who are struggling to get started, and they don't always have a lot of options when they're trying to go it alone.
I think that a lot of people don't realize that it costs money to have a bank account, and there are minimums, there are fees. And if you want to go open a bank account with $10, the answer is typically no. And if you don't have a lot of extra, if you don't have already $1,000 for an emergency expense and you're just trying to get started, it's really hard to find a place to do that. And if an employer can say, we'll take your $10 and we'll put it over here for you, I think that helps the human, and then it also helps engage the employee with the employer, because that doesn't really cost the employer anything. It's just help for the human. And in my experience, most employers want to help their employees.
Yeah, and they have this magical thing called a payroll slot. You know, we
Mhm.
talk a lot about the fundamental relationship between employee and employer is financial, right? They're not just volunteering for you, they're there to help create their life and pay for their life and build this financial stability that they seek. And if they're struggling to do that, I think it's natural for them to kind of come back to the employer and say, how do I make this work better? What do you have for me on this? I think especially the younger generation is starting to do that. But again, the opportunity for them to go out and do that is not uniform. You know, just for go ahead.
You know, employers used to have Christmas clubs. Do you remember those? Are any of you old enough to remember those? You
We
maybe in
talk
your
about that a
first
lot.
job, there was a
Yeah.
Christmas club, and you could have a payroll slot and put 5 or 10 or 50 or whatever amount of money you wanted, and the employer would hold it until whatever predetermined point, November, December, whatever, and then they would give you that money so
Yes.
that you had saved up for Christmas through the course of the year. And I think debt in January is a big problem for people because they've overspent for Christmas, where you could pre-plan your Christmas. Those have disappeared. This is, I mean, an emergency savings account is not a Christmas fund, but the idea is the same.
Yeah, and with Sunny Day Fund, obviously, like we're not just a rainy day fund, right? Our goal is to help people save up for aspirational and known expenses, not just the unknown.
Yep.
And Christmas clubs were a great thing. All employees loved it, right? But a lot of them went away because of you have wage garnishment laws, and the employers are holding these funds, and are they
Mhm.
commingled with company assets? And every once in a while, we run across a company who's still trying to do that themselves, and it's like, wow, we've got some compliance things to talk about there. You should just outsource that because there are a lot of people that use Sunny Day Fund as their Christmas club per se.
Yep.
Don, I'm anxious to kind of hear what you have to say about kind of providing access to employees on a uniform basis, because sometimes there are financial barriers that some individuals might face, and when an employer makes something available, then everybody has access to it.
Yeah, and I think, one of the other things that, I think is really important is access to the banking system, which I think Allison has really kind of spoke to. Some of our portfolio companies pay a good chunk of their workers through payroll cards, right? And so there's a lot of different ways that people are receiving their money, interacting with the financial system. For us, we see emergency savings as a cornerstone financial activity. It is something that even if you're doing it on your own, it is very key, not just for building wealth, but also as a form of insurance. When we go to the workplace, it then becomes a cornerstone financial benefit that I think you can build a lot of other things around. And so that's kind of what we see and kind of what we talk to our portfolio companies about, is really kind of how emergency savings can complement the existing benefits and vice versa.
Yeah, and Kevin, I know that you had, some clients that you've recommended Sunny Day Fund for different situations, and I'm wondering kind of what you heard from them in 2023. What had them looking into something like this? What challenges were they facing? What were you hearing from them on the employer side that has them looking into some options where you could come in and be like, "Have you ever heard of this really cool company?"
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing we've seen, especially over the last year with inflation and the economy, is employees going to their employer and asking for an advance on their pay, or you might see payroll companies bringing up earned wage access. And those things are great for, short one-time events.
Yeah.
But what we've found, and I know, Rachel, you've seen similar, um, a lot of repeat offenders will,
Hmm.
borrow from their paycheck, and they're borrowing from the next paycheck to make up for that, and it perpetuates the cycle of debt. So just changing the thinking of um, you know building savings habits rather than debt habits is something that really intrigues us at Tribridge. And um, just from a benefit standpoint, being able to create a link between my employer helped me save for my house or buy my first car, or whatever that goal is, especially with the buckets that you can set up within Sunny Day Fund, creates a stickiness for those employees. And lower wage employees are less likely to move jobs for an extra dollar an hour if they have that in the bank.
Yeah, I agree. I love that kind of storytelling part of it where we can really bring the employee and the employer together. You brought up earned wage access, which was a good segue. I wanted to kind of talk about what you had seen happening in 2023 as you come across employers and have these conversations. What other strategies have you seen them employ, right? We've talked about earned wage access. And again, I think that that's an important part of the financial matrix that should be available to employees. But sometimes we do see those repeat offenders, and we kind of, if you take from next paycheck, then the next one will be reduced, and then we take it again, and then we start kind of spiraling the drain because they don't always use it as the one-off need that it was designed to be. But I'm kind of curious to hear from you guys what else you had seen employers trying to do in the world of financial wellness or financial well-being, or just implementing financial resources into their benefit stack.
The other major, I guess, ask that we have from employer groups
Mhm.
is around student debt repayment programs, especially after
Mhm.
October of last year.
Yeah.
Typically, we'll introduce Sunny Day Fund at that point because if you look at a broad workforce, a student debt repayment platform is only going to affect usually a pretty small subset of that
Right.
group, depending on the demographics. Whereas Sunny Day Fund can be a useful tool for the entire base. So we'll often propose Sunny Day Fund as an alternative to a student loan repayment plan.
Yeah, I think that's so wise to just really understand your workforce and know what the needs are instead of having a blanket thing. It's like, well, this is what everybody else is doing, so this is what we should do. And in the chat, I loved Aaron's comments. Hey, Aaron, just saw you guys down at Puerto Rico. I loved Aaron's comments about just kind of understanding that there are certain families who are really going to be struggling more than others, and having a way to really target them with a benefit that brings real meaningful relief to them. Feel free to show up in the chat, guys. We want to know that you're here. Please ask your questions. We're all about that. Don, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I think the question about what HR teams and companies are thinking about when it comes to addressing issues of financial need. I think we see a couple of things. One is the establishment and maintenance of an in-house employer loan program is something that we've seen. It's very, very common.
Very
And
common.
I think the other thing that we see is no action. I think there's a little bit of paralysis when it comes to taking a move in this particular space. I think there's a lot of solutions that are out there, some of them good, some of them not so good. And so a lot of times we see HR folks at the end of the day kind of saying, we don't know what to do. We want to do no harm. And so we end up doing nothing. And so I think that's where Worker Solutions comes in and really, kind of holds hands a little bit and really kind of steers HR folks toward a particular direction, really depending on the needs of their workforce. And so I think it's really, really important to do pulse surveys with your workers to really kind of understand both what they need, but also what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I love the do no harm concept because we do see that a lot where people kind of have analysis paralysis. And that's where I think the data can become really powerful. So it's like, I'm not sure how big of a priority this is and if this would matter. And I'm like, well, let's look at your Form 5500, shall we? So if we go there and we look at the participant loans against the 401k, and it's like, it seems a good portion of your population is already using the 401k as if it's an emergency savings account. That is just the most expensive way to do things. So when we talk to CFOs and people, again, we try to, all of those statistics, all of those data points are real stories of real people, and they're not all taking money out to go buy a house in Fiji. I mean, the vast majority of them are less than $2,000. This is just people trying to survive. So if we talked, it's like you wouldn't tell your son to do that or your daughter to do that. Why are we telling our employees to do that? Many times because they don't have another option. So if we implement some sort of workplace emergency savings, it gives a first line of defense to protect those retirement assets. Allison.
And a lot of those 401k loans are for medical expenses.
Yes.
So you can address a few items with an emergency savings account.
And I think that's why it's so important to kind of come like total rewards. I think there's been this migration into this more holistic approach where we've got physical and mental and financial wellness all coming together because we know that financial stress impacts mental health, which shows up on the health insurance claims. And all of these benefits are interconnected, right? So as you're building that benefit stack as a people leader, it's really important to understand how all of those things fit together. Wondering, just kind of on the other financial resources, talking about the 401k a little bit. Kevin, I know that you guys do a lot of work on the retirement savings side. There's always been a little bit of a concern with employers that there would be some sort of cannibalization of the 401k, like, oh, if I implement some sort of emergency savings, then employees might reduce what they're contributing to retirement, and really put it more towards this program because it's liquid and they have access to it.
Yeah.
And it's been great how like Delta's been really forthcoming on their data where it's like the exact opposite is shown to be true.
Yeah, exactly. I think we found that as well, especially with the employer rewarded piece of the emergency savings fund, especially with Sunny Day.
Mm.
People, there's an incentive to place the money and keep it in that emergency savings fund, so they're not continually running it dry. And having that stability of the extra money in the bank for the emergency allows people to defer more to their 401k because they don't need every dollar of their paycheck as much anymore. I also wanted to address Artie's question in the chat regarding the fiduciary responsibility employers undertake. Compliance and maintenance of the 401k, of course, is the biggest expense. I agree. Rachel talked about the number of 401k loans, and just from an administration perspective, that can be costly and time consuming. Having something like the Sunny Day Fund to lower the amount of loans against the 401k greatly reduces that expense.
And I think with like Secure Act 2.0, when that came out, we had these pension linked emergency savings accounts because we saw the leakage, right? It was rampant during COVID, and they were really trying to figure out creative ways to address that. And it's, the pension linked emergency savings accounts. It's another part of your alphabet soup. We call it PLESAs. Those are in plan, right? They fall in within ERISA, and Secure Act 2.0 is really specifically about that. So we're just kind of carving a little pocket out there when we can make some of that more accessible in times of emergencies, as opposed to the traditional leakage that we would see from the 401k for times of emergency. A lot of times plan sponsors and companies are telling us that the administrative lift on that is a little bit heavy, and it seems a little bit clunky, and everybody's a little bit unsure about how that's going to work with compliance and paying it back. And there's a $2,500 limit, and it just seems very limiting. So that's where we've really tried to take this approach of being out of plan, being outside of ERISA, being able to reward different populations within the workforce differently. Because again, if we look at who's taking most of those 401k loans, we want to be able to address the people that are telling us they need the most help because they're having struggles going out and procuring a lot of those financial resources on their own. Or like we talked about, it's a behavioral shift, right? People want to start being a saver, but if you provide that payroll slot, now we've got the pathway to do that. And with those rewards we talked about, you have the motivation to do that. So it can really impact some different outcomes. Don, I wondered with you, just some different industries as far as how we're talking about where we see this going, and different industries or segments of the workforce that we really feel like this is going to become a really popular thing in the future. I have a poll that's going to come up in just a second, but I wanted to hear what you had to think about where this is going to be most popular based on what you've been hearing from employers.
What's interesting, like I said, it's a relatively small sample size, but I think, one of the findings relative to the gender of employees, just overall in terms of benefits, you just see women accessing benefits at a much, much higher rate than do
Yeah.
men. There's lots of reasons for that.
Yeah.
And I think that the two companies that we are implementing Sunny Day Fund actually have a predominantly male workforce.
That
And
is
so we're
interesting.
actually really intrigued to really kind of penetrate and really kind of get those numbers high when it comes to take up and participation. And so that's something that we're really looking forward to in a segment of the workforce that we feel like is not accessing benefits to the extent that they should.
Yeah. But again, back to those questions in the chat. I thought it was interesting, Allison, maybe you can talk about that, how HR has, I mean, the noise out there with solution providers and all the
So
different things,
much.
and they're all wonderful. But as an HR person, you can get really inundated with that. And I think that's where the benefit, the relationship with your benefit consultant or your benefit advisor becomes so important, because you really want to target benefits specifically to what this account needs. You're going to understand their workforce. You're going to understand what other benefits they have and really see where the holes are. I just hope you can talk about that relationship a bit.
I can. I think it's important for employers to look at their benefits brokerage firm as an advisor or a consultant, or if they do not, to hire an advisor or a consultant, because the thought processes, and I think Kevin can address this as well, when you are advising or consulting, you can help narrow that focus, right? You can do the surveying, you can see what people need, and then you can address the specific problems. And, we can sort through 100 options or 25 options and bring three,
Right.
which helps to focus on whatever the particular problem is, because one thing that HR does not lack for is problems. So if we can help limit what they need to deal with, then we're not just helping employees with stuff, we're actually helping them to solve their problem and in turn helping HR solve problems more effectively.
Yeah, because I think
Yeah,
you do have all of these things. Yeah, go ahead. I was hoping you could talk about. Go ahead.
yeah, agreed. Just to give some more context behind that polling question as well,
Yeah.
we recently polled a subset of our clients, and I think the question was posed as, if you had unlimited capital and time, which of these categories of benefits would you implement in 2024? And there were 5 or 6 different areas, and financial wellness, 80% of the respondents chose. So
80%.
I think that just shows the need is out there. And it wasn't specific to emergency savings, but I think we've, determined that emergency savings is one of the broadest and probably most needed financial wellness benefits. So the need is certainly out there. I would also like to add, at least when I was first introduced to this concept, I immediately thought of our nonprofit clients, maybe some of the lower paid workforces that we work with. Interestingly enough, we found a lot of interest in some of the higher compensated employees as well in the government contracting space, professional services firms, law firms. The need is across the board just because of the lifestyles that individuals live.
And I'm
And I
just going
think
to
we shouldn't
pick,
overlook that.
yeah.
It's not just pigeonholed over here. It's a very broad swath of an employee demographic that will need access to emergency savings.
Yeah, and I was just going to confirm Allison's sense that, a lot of, particularly in the middle market, a lot of HR professionals are overwhelmed. And there's really kind of almost a reactionary putting out fires type of mindset, right? That does not really provide enough oxygen for you to sit down and say, in 2 years, what do we want our 401k loans to be? What do we want participation to look like? And so having the ability to sit down with an external team to really kind of go through that more proactive strategic planning process, if you will, about where do we want to take benefits comprehensively, I think is something that we see a lot of need and demand for out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of people taking advantage of a lot of those programs that employers have are not just the hourly or low to moderate income workers. To your point, almost nearly half of all six-figure earners are still living paycheck to paycheck, right? We've taught people really well how to spend money. We've taught people really well how to go into debt. And it's just that the higher earners might have some other resources to fall back on, and they might not be as squeaky, right? But they still need a whole lot of help, and they still need to build better behaviors. And that's a big part of what we're doing on our platform. Like, we're behaviorally driven. So this is something about, it's really just a broad-based need that's across the workforce. And that's why, to Kevin's point earlier, this really cuts a wide cross-section of the workforce and makes an impact on people. And in our platform specifically, like, not all emergency savings programs do the bucket mental accounting that we do, but our name is the sunny day fund, right? We're not the rainy day fund. So we think that there are a lot more sunny days in life that happen before you're 65 that need money. And let's find a way to help that. And like Don was talking about earlier, if they can really look back and be like, my employer helped me get this car. My employer helped me save up for a security deposit so I could get my own place. My employer helped me save up for Christmas presents for my kids, or take a family vacation. Like, these are all things, everybody wants to bring those good things into their life, but right now they're typically going on the credit card and people are paying them off in 5 months at a 37% interest rate or whatever.
Yep.
So if we just save up for that ahead of time, and you're actually earning interest on that saving until you get to that goal, as opposed to paying it in one lump sum and then paying interest on it after the fact, We're accomplishing the same thing at the end of the day, but in a much smarter and much more rewarding way. And people want to feel good about that, you know? I'm kind of wondering what you guys see as far as like the size of employers that really would be focusing on new adaption. Like this is a new idea, right? So those people that are wanting to innovate, sometimes the bigger companies can be trailblazers, and other times the bigger something is, the slower it moves. Sometimes small employers kind of hear about things through the grapevine, or mid market can kind of be the primary determinant of what's to come. I'm wondering what you're seeing on the employer size as far as things that are people that are prioritizing these financial resources.
I think that employers who are a little bit more in tune with what their employees need or are asking for, or maybe the better way to say that is the employers that are giving employees an opportunity to say what they want, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
and I think that that is not necessarily size driven. I think that that is philosophically driven, or in highly competitive industries, those are the employers that will take action faster because they need to.
Yeah. And Don, I know that you've seen some mid-market companies really starting to embrace this. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what is the business reason that you think that they're really starting to come to you? I think your one story with that one specific client is so cool. Like it's such an emotional thing that they're trying to do for their employees because this money really brings something important to them. But I think that overall, I'm just wondering what you're seeing in the mid-market because you've been in that space.
Well, I think we do think, middle market companies, both have, I think, certain advantages, but also certain drawbacks. I think there is a certain budgetary environment that makes it difficult to implement new benefits that may cost, let's just say, $200,000, right? And so part of what Worker Solutions does is really kind of help to mitigate some of those overall costs to make it more affordable for middle market employers, because the larger employers, the Fortune 1000s, et cetera, that's really kind of a rounding error by and large for them. But for middle market companies, they're really looking at the near term, quarter by quarter, just in terms of their cash flow. And so they're a little bit more price sensitive, in addition to the fact that their HR teams are, not as well staffed as other large companies. And so the ability, once again, to be able to think proactively is a little bit more limited. What we see with middle market companies. The two middle market companies that are adopting Sunny Day Fund, they're quite different. They both have predominantly male workforces. One is a landscaping company that relies on migrant labor through the visa lottery. They want to be able to use Sunny Day Fund as a way to save up for permanent residency or a green card, right? So they want to be able to co-save with that particular segment of the workforce to put them on a path to citizenship. The other one is one that actually does security for TSA and other large events using canines. And after a while, those canines, age out of service. And so there's a lot of dog handlers that actually want to be able to purchase their dog that they've worked with for the past several years. And so Sunny Day Fund can actually be a mechanism for them to, once again, co-save with their workforce to be able to bring this dog back into the family.
And like what an
That's really
emotional thing that is, right? Like I love that. And money is emotional for people, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of shame and hopelessness around it. There's trust issues around it. It's really difficult for people to kind of get started on their own. So I think that's another reason where the employers, yeah, I tell them all the time, like if you guys have ever been on a demo with me, you hear this. I'm like, we do not want to outsource this, right? This is the pain spot of your employees, and you can make a huge impact here because you have this payroll slot. It's this magical portal where all their money comes from, right? So, like, this is your horse, put on your armor, deliver the solution, be the hero, save the day, right? This is a really, really powerful thing that employers can do because we still have people standing on check cashing facility corners on every corner of the city, right? right? There are huge swaths of the population who have historically been underserved by financial institutions or don't trust financial institutions, but they trust their employer more. And this is the source of their income. This is right where it comes in. So if we can just automate that and start saving, right? That's the same way that the 401k developed. It was payroll deducted and employer rewarded. So let's take that same familiar model that works so well for the retirement long-term savings program and put it towards a short-term savings program that's liquid that they can use for whatever. And then that way the 401k grows undisturbed, right? And again, our behavioral approach is a little bit more of the more money you keep in the account, the more money you get from your employer. So it's not just a straight contribution match necessarily, but we've really tried to gamify this because people want to do this, but it's about unlocking the how sometimes. And that kind of leads me to some financial coaching and financial counseling services that a lot of times people talk about in the same conversations as we're talking about emergency savings, right? Because a lot of times we have leadership at a company who's like, I think we should do some financial coaching and some financial literacy, and those things are great. We're really aligned with those things. But a lot of times the employees are asking for something a little bit more actionable, a little bit more tactical. And again, unlocking that payroll slot really helps them accumulate wealth. And then all of a sudden they pick their head up and they become interested in these conversations around counseling and literacy and things like that. So Don, I was wondering if you could talk about kind of the impact of coupling financial counseling or coaching with a program like an emergency savings plan for improved outcomes.
No, it's absolutely critical. I mean, for us, financial coaching begins and ends with action. And so it's absolutely critical. It's not imperative that there be necessarily a sunny day fund or comparable product at the workplace for you to see impact or outcomes from financial coaching, but it certainly makes it easier to point to something that's actually at your workplace. I mean, the reality is that workers have very complex financial lives.
Yeah.
Saving is one part of it, but obviously there is debt and credit that people bring with them to the workplace, and so there's folks need navigation a lot in their lives, and so financial coaches can really kind of help really dedicated employees really think about what are going to be my short and long-term financial goals, and really kind of put them on a path to do so. And so we've seen pretty really good outcomes when it comes to financial coaching with regard to credit improvement, debt reduction, as well as creating a path for savings. But having a sunny day fund is certainly something that would be an easy thing to point to if you are a financial coach with an employer.
Yeah, and I think the financial coaching piece, what you said about understanding people's where they're at is so important because it's not always a blanket solution, right? So we talk about retirement accounts a lot, and we work with a lot of industries like maybe hospitality or home nursing care where maybe a 401k isn't going to move the needle, right? If I can't afford my groceries this month, it's really going to be hard to lecture me about locking money away for 30 years from now and make me feel like you're empathetic to where I'm at. And so I think that there are a lot of companies who would like to have some sort of savings. We want to encourage people to save, but maybe retirement savings isn't the first stop on the savings journey for every employee. And having something there to get them started and get them excited, because we see emergency savings in the data shows it's a stepping stone into retirement savings. So I was hoping you guys could talk a little bit about what you plan to see, what you expect to see in 2024, as far as emergency savings uptake, how its impact on retirement savings, and really its impact on this whole conversation around financial wellness and financial well-being products that are being introduced into the workplace, how it fits into the matrix. Kevin?
Yeah, couple of things that I've been thinking of while Don was talking there. Obviously retirement savings is important, as well as using an HSA as a retirement vehicle. A lot of people aren't educated on the tax benefits of the HSA. However, both of those vehicles are fairly illiquid, especially for a period of time. So having that liquid base through an emergency savings account opens up doors for other financial products moving forward. Another area we expect to see a big uptick in ESA adoption is in the nonprofit industry. particularly grant-funded nonprofits. They're not always able to just give someone a raise or a bonus when when a need arises. But this is a benefit that they can budget for right into their proposals and things like that. So I think it's a great solution, especially in the nonprofit space.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. That's a big difference that I've seen between last year and this year already. I talked to a lot of clients, customers, and prospects last year who said, "Oh, we give internal personal loans for people. We're a family-run company and we care about our employees. And if anything happens, they can come to us and we're going to take care of them." Okay. I talked to them this year and they're like, yeah, so those requests are coming hard and fast. And we're at the point now where we're starting to talk about which one of those are we going to approve and which ones are we not going to approve. And we're afraid about compliance and discrimination and all of these. Like we're not a loan vehicle, right? But we were trying to do the right thing, but we've created a dependency because we see those repeat offenders continue to come back to us because we haven't taught them how to be financially stable. We've taught them how to come to us and we'll rescue them every time. And that's not the goal of what we want to do. We want to take care of them, but we want to teach them how to take care of themselves. And another story that we had recently, we talked to, she was actually an HR director. And she said, "Do you want to know why I don't participate in the 401k?" And I was like, "Yes, we do want to know why." And she said, "I'm a separated woman, and any money I put in my 401k, my husband will have access to. And this is the first thing I can really see myself building financial freedom with." And so to Don's point, like there are so many situations out there where that counseling really becomes important to understand what your situation is and what's best for you and what's going to move the needle for you there. Because I think so many of those stories, we've been the first bank that some employees have ever had because people still get turned down for accounts all the time. You don't always know that, or see that, but it's still happening a lot. Allison, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see this making an impact on, again, maybe some of those low to moderate income workers. Maybe you have employers that really have employees that can't access benefits on their own, and how this kind of fits in with things like the 401k or the HSA that population may or may not be participating in, and how you see that marrying in 2024.
So I think that Kevin said something very important, which is that both a 401k and an HSA are really wonderful saving tools, but they're very illiquid. People
Yeah.
still get flat tires, people's water heaters still blow up, children break bones, people break bones. And those are all things that are unexpected, not necessarily huge, but just when you start to get a little traction, then boom, it's gone, right? So having an emergency savings account that is accessible, but not too accessible, and easily the money never comes to you, right? It allows you to have this cushion over here and invest in the 401k and invest in the HSA account and grow your whole financial life, not just not just these illiquid kind of things that you have to borrow from. And if your water heater blows up, that's not an HSA qualified expense, and
Right.
you don't want to have to borrow from your 401k for that. And the other thing that we haven't really talked about is stress, regardless of the stress, un unnatural stress. So the negative kind of stress, not the sort of everyday performance kind of stress, is very hard on people's health. So if we can alleviate some of this, we can cut down on some of the unexpected things on the health side, and we can improve the quality of life for people in a very subtle way that benefits everybody. That benefits the human, that benefits the HR department, that benefits the financial budget of everybody, and you can help people grow themselves. I think it's quite rewarding.
Yeah, and I think that perfectly talks about in the Q&A. There was a just a statement about financial wellness, reducing the stress of employees, which again can improve performance, attendance, as well as potentially reduce medical claims. These other really cool things that have been coming out, like Professor Carrie Leanna up at University of Pittsburgh has been doing all these studies about the kind of link between financial precarity and safety incidents. So they've rolled out, emergency savings platforms and programs, and really seen a statistically significant difference between the people participating in emergency savings programs and not participating in emergency savings programs, as far as their, just tickets and safety incidents. And we see that we have greater productivity, less distraction, just a more productive employee when they're not stressed about something came in and how am I going to get this money and which credit card isn't maxed out and who am I going to borrow money from. So I think there's got to be really exciting studies that there's a lot of more work to do on that area, but I think that could potentially be huge for some big manufacturing and labor kind of industries that might really be taking advantage of this. Wanted to address really quick in the Q&A as well. Chris asked if an employer gives rewards or money to the Sunny Day Fund, is it taxable to the employee? So I don't know if any of you guys want to answer that, if you want me to take it. I'm happy to take it. Yeah. So what we're doing is really for that employer reward, it's really just increasing W-2 wages. It's a fringe benefit. So it's a sneaky way to get employers to pay employees a little bit more money. But again, it's all based on a behavioral change, right? So if the employer is providing this, it's usually based on the account balances. So they're providing a reward based on the balances maintained as opposed to the contributions made. Specifically in our case, there are other emergency savings platforms that just do flat dollar for dollar matches, but we feel like if that employee gets more money, if they keep more money in it, that's going to encourage them to keep it as a spending account and not treat it as a savings account. Because a lot of times when people see money, it's like, oh, I'm going to go buy some shoes. And it's like, well, let's think about this. So we want to incentivize that, use that employer reward as a carrot to build those better financial behaviors. So right now it's just additional W-2 wages as a fringe benefit, but the employee portion is post-tax deductions anyway. So it's free and clear, ready to go, liquid asset. Other questions. What happens to the funds if the employee leaves or takes another opportunity at another company or is laid off? And does the employer have any responsibility over the funds in that scenario? So when the employee is making their payroll deductions on a post-tax basis, and then the employer is kicking in a reward once a quarter based on those balances. Remember, in our situation, again, each emergency savings company is a little bit different, but in our situation, we're actually opening a brand new account for each and every participant. So they're going to have their own account. It's already in their name. So there's not a lot to sever should they leave that place of employment. The account's already in their name. They maintain the funds that are in the account. They continue to earn the yield from the bank because it's in their name. It's just that their contributions stop and the employer rewards would stop at that point. But this should be a first line of defense for them in any sort of career transition. Don't liquidate your 401k. Roll your 401k over. Use your Sunny Day Fund if you need to. If you don't need to use it, let it sit in there and it'll continue to earn that 3% yield from the bank. But it's their money, free and clear, ready to go. Can be used on whatever they want. Hopefully that answers you. If you guys have any more questions, please keep popping them up into. You're welcome, Krista. I hope to see you soon. He's another local friendly face. And if you guys have any other questions, this would be a good time to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I think that they're both enabled. Sid's in the background, my Vanna. He's been answering all the questions and popping things in there. There was a question about kind of the in-plan versus out-of-plan, the pension-linked emergency savings accounts as opposed to our out-of-plan solutions. So as Sid said in the answer, the current legislation based on Secure Act 2.0 that had come out in December of 2022 limits the balances for emergencies to $2,500. So I just
think
think it's a
another
little bit peculiar. Go ahead.
I think another key piece there is it also limits contributions for non-highly compensated employees. So that other side of the workforce that might be making a lot of money but spending a lot of money as well would not be able to contribute. So the out of plan solution like Sunny Day Fund allows for all employees to contribute, which I think is an important distinction as well.
And again, I think that there are certain industries where a 401k is not the status quo. I don't think that having a retirement account is in every company yet. So again, it could be a different starting place if you have an out of plan. Gives you a little bit more flexibility. So the in plans, again, that something's better than nothing, but I think that 2024 will show us that out of plan has become the preferred choice, the preferred vehicle for emergency savings. Did I miss any other questions? Let me see. Going through the chat, just seeing. I loved how Allison talked about the financial wellness, reducing stress. So I think that's going to be a huge thing that we're going to see coming ahead. And again, I do think that when I was on your podcast, Allison, you talked about that, how you had heard the word emergency, like financial wellness or financial well-being, probably more in the past 12 months than you'd ever heard in your entire life.
Yes.
And I think that there's a shift in mentality where employers are starting to realize, wow, if employee problems are left alone, they quickly can become employer problems. And so it's easier for us to kind of address some of these things, build a more financially stable workforce. If somebody's got $2,000 saved up with us, maybe they won't job hop for 50 cents an hour across the street. And I'm so glad that you touched on that, because I think that financial stress is going to it's going to come to play more with HR. Hopefully you've kind of seen that in some of your conversations too.
We have. I have a client who the employer is like, I'm going to teach these people to save if it kills me. And he wasn't kidding. And he's done some great work in fostering that.
Yeah.
And this is a natural next step for him. But I hear it more often. He's my early bird kind of guy. He's pretty far ahead of the curve in terms of how they do things for people. They're also very philosophically, yes, we have rules and order, but we take care of the humans. These are humans in our care while they're here. And that is a little bit more engaged than many employers, but I see more employers coming along to that kind of philosophy, particularly after the pandemic. And now, particularly, we don't have a client that has the full labor force that they want. The war for keeping employees that you want and acquiring employees that you want is heating up. It's getting hotter every day. And I see more and more creative ways and broader ways of engaging with employees.
And talking about employee engagement, like we had just kind of summarized our 2023 data statistics and our impact metrics to really understand we're a very data-driven company. and we really want to be able to prove out some of these things that we're talking about. And a lot of programs, I think, struggle with employee engagement. Like we'll go in and see some sort of financial wellness program or financial literacy program in there. And a lot of times has single digit participation, and it's hard for us to get employees enthusiastic about programs. And people are surprised when they learn that Sunny Day Fund has north of 50% participation. It's like, well, it's free for the employee to participate in, right? How many things on their open enrollment benefit are free? And this is not securitized or invested. They're not going to lose it if the market tanks because it's FDIC insured dollars. And then, these are programs that they're not going to lose and their employer is going to kick in some sort of match. So we actually saw, I'm surprised by this statistic. I love it. 82% of our savers, after they set their initial deduction when they first participated, 82% came back and returned to the platform to increase their payroll deduction into their Sunny Day Fund. I mean, talk about engagement. Like that's the kind of enthusiasm that we'd love to see from every program that we offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm
Yep.
sure some people said it and forget it, but it's just really cool to see, like, not only are they not like reducing it or keeping it the same, they're actually increasing it. 82%. I was just blown away by that. I love that. I think we're wrapping up. I just wanted to see if there was anything else that you guys wanted to bring up that we hadn't touched on yet. We can give everybody a few minutes.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes to Allison's
Yeah.
financial stress comment. So I think one of the things about having your own emergency fund is that it provides you a sense of comfort, that if there is, this, what Matt Ball talks about, there's an unexpected expense every quarter. If you always feel like you're on the edge, just waiting for the other shoe to drop, that's just a form of learned helplessness that does lead to stress, right? You're like, it is going to happen. I'm not prepared. What am I going to do? And so I think, having something tangible that really, provides that peace of mind is, I think, one of the reasons why you do see this high take up and high stickiness with this particular solution.
I think it also shows that people are interested in managing their money, but you can't just teach them how, because there may not be a place for them to access. And Sunny Day Fund is an entry point.
Yeah. Such a good point. Kevin, I was wondering if you had any kind of parting thoughts, bold
Yeah.
predictions for 2024.
I think this was great. Thanks everyone for joining. Like Donna and Allison said, obviously the financial stress can lead to higher medical claims. increases on disability rates, 401k loans, everything across the board there. So I think, when you're considering this as an employer, of course, there's a cost associated with it, but this is one of the unique ancillary benefits where the downstream effects are going to actually save you money more than likely in the long term, whether that's from employee turnover, lowering medical utilization, et cetera. You know, a penny spent here can save a dollar down the road. So I think it's definitely something we're going to see a big uptick in this year.
Love
I
it when you
agree.
talk about dollars. Any other parting thoughts from you guys, or predictions, bold predictions for 2024? We appreciate you guys being such cheerleaders for our work. This is really, a mission that's close to home for us. It's a really personal calling for us where, everything that we have done, it's all lived experiences. I think a lot of people know Sid, our founder and CEO's founding story, but it's the same story that a lot of employees and workers are facing, where they really feel unheard because there's this perception sometimes that the employee benefits package is really there to benefit the higher ups and does not always address and meet the low to moderate income workers where they are. Oh, quick question from Chris. Based on your data of Sunny Day Fund, HSA, and 401k are all offered, do employees shift out of retirement savings? Anybody want to touch on that?
Yeah, so Chris, that's what you would think, but we've actually seen the inverse. Once they build a emergency savings base, they're actually increasing their retirement savings contributions to the HSAs, et cetera. I know Rachel said she has some data from Delta Airlines. Is that right?
When Delta had rolled out their emergency savings program, they were one of the largest employers that really shared a lot of data and gave us a lot of transparency into their performance of the program, and as well as how it impacted other programs. And so there's always this kind of assumption that if people are participating in emergency savings, they're going to reduce their retirement contributions. But what we saw is that not only did they participate in those participating in emergency savings increase their retirement contributions, but we actually had additional participants. And we've seen that in our own workers webinars that we had done previously, where we interviewed, specific employees at companies that are saving with Sunny Day Fund. And they said, before Sunny Day Fund, I never would have thought about entering the 401k. I wasn't a saver. I didn't have that mentality, but this has completely shifted my mindset, because now I'm thinking, what do I want to save up for 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now, 3 decades from now? And all of a sudden, this light bulb has gone off in my head, and now I want to participate in that. Now I get it. Now I know how to play the match game at my employer. Don?
Savings addictive and infectious. I mean,
Right?
I think you're just talking about it, right? I mean, it does, like you said, it does become a mentality, and you begin to think about how you can really use it to your advantage in various aspects of your life.
Yeah. I love that. It's been so great for people to be like, wait, I can set this money aside through payroll and I can just take it out when I can use it. Nobody's going to smack my hand when I access my own money. That's always been my experience. And I'm like, welcome to the sunny side, my friends. All right, guys, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, sunnydayfund.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn. Check out our blog post. We put a lot of content out there. Again, we're helping to create a brand new, emerging, new benefit category within the benefit stack for all of you brokers and consultants out there. We're working with federal legislators to work on some out-of-plan ESA bills to make sure that we stay outside of ERISA, because that's definitely where we want to stay and want the market to stay. But we would like to get a couple things to happen through legislation. It'd be lovely to have auto enrollment. It'd be lovely to have the employer match to be tax preferred. So there's lots of things that we can do, lots of work to be done. So stay tuned for all of those updates. I appreciate all 3 of you, my friendly sunny faces, joining me today. Hopefully this was wonderful for you guys and that you got something out of it. Please feel free to stay tuned. You'll get a recording of this as well that you can feel free to share out. Thank you guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
sunny day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.